presentation. And thank you all for coming and watching the presentation today. When I originally submitted this, can you all hear me in the back? Okay? When I originally submitted this talk title, I had intended to talk about some of the policy failures that we have made repeatedly in combating outbreaks of mosquito-borne disease. But in the past year or two, I've participated in a number of relatively high-level summits and interactions with decision makers, and it's become clear that it is dawning on us that some of the outbreaks that we've been fighting the last couple of years are actually part of a larger pattern, a dominant pattern, a scarier pattern. And so I would like to really, instead of talking about the history stuff and policy stuff, I'd really like to talk about the developing problems that we're having on a global scale with mosquito-borne disease. Start off by talking about Zika, and then I would like to put that in the context of these larger problems, and hopefully end up talking about what it is that we as a species need to start thinking about doing. So I work in public health entomology. That's the entomology associated with population level health threats as opposed to medical entomology that works more with the individual, medical, clinical side of entomological problems. And we work with outbreaks of disease, mostly, how to stop them, how to predict them, how to conduct surveillance for them, and that kind of thing. The diseases that we work with, there's a bunch of them. Most of them that I've been working with lately have been transmitted by this young lady, the yellow fever mosquito. I don't know if you can see my little itsy-bitsy red dot here, but she's a female by her antennae there and her pouts right there. It's a member of the Stegobiini group of mosquitoes characterized by the basal white bands on the legs. The main characteristic of this particular mosquito is this very distinctive lyre shape on the top of the thorax right here with two lines in the middle. Very easy mosquito to identify. Was reported to the Americas for the slave trade in the 1600s. Caused large-scale yellow fever outbreaks throughout the eastern half of the United States, including here in Kentucky, a number of very severe outbreaks. This almost exclusively in association with Maine. It's a container breeder, specifically breeding in containers made by humans. You go out in the woods and jungles of Africa or South America, you won't find this thing living. You go out in the Everglades, you won't find this thing living. It's very, very, very rare in those locations. It is a cockroach of mosquitoes, and it depends almost exclusively on human beings to create the habitat that it needs to breed in. Very close association. Until the mid-1980s, it was the principal mosquito that bit people here in Central Kentucky. You would have gone out, sat in your backyard in, say, 1982 on a summer evening. About 85% of the mosquito bites you would have received would have come from this mosquito. Now, it's rare. Only 1 in maybe 6,000 mosquitoes would just be very, very rare mosquito. The reason for that is because it's been displaced by this other one right here, which is the Asian tiger mosquito, Aedes albopictus, identifiable with this. My light's only on for a second here. Identifiable by this white stripe on the top of the bowworm, as opposed to that lighter shape. Now, Aedes albopictus, the biotech that we have here is from northern Japan. It's not a very efficient vector of human disease, most of the human diseases. So what we have done, this invasive species has come in, it has pushed Aedes aegypti south to the southernmost part of Florida, displaced it, and it doesn't transmit much in the way of disease. So it's a good deal for us. This is now the most common mosquito biting people throughout the country, and most of these in the United States. Now, Asian mosquito that vector is Zika. Zika is the hot mosquito virus of the day, so we want to talk about Zika. Let me talk a little bit about Zika before I talk about the larger term. Zika, like most mosquito-borne diseases, most mosquito-borne viruses, is a positive single-stranded RNA virus. This is important. These viruses don't replicate with much fidelity as do the DNA viruses, so they're much more likely to have transcription errors. We'll see some characteristics about that here shortly. Something else I was going to say about it, it'll come to me in a second. Oh, it's a flavivirus. Flavivirus is a genus of viruses in the family Flaviviridae. It includes a number of the big mosquito viruses like yellow fever, dengue, and so on. This one, though, is in the Spongwini clade of those viruses. It's a relatively small clade. All of the viruses in this clade, unlike the other flaviviruses, these replicate inside the host cell nucleus as opposed to the host cell cytoplasm or mitochondria. And many of them are associated with birth defects in monkeys. This virus was first isolated from the Zika forest in Uganda in 1947 on monkeys, rhesus monkeys. First human seropositives appeared in 1968, probably because that's when serological tests became available in Central Africa more than anything else, probably before then. The first outbreak of humans in 1870. Mild symptoms, a large percentage of people are asymptomatic. The number that's most commonly batted around is 80%. Very symptomatic. They'll be orderly. So it's been around for quite a while. The virus has been around for quite a while. And hasn't really caused that many problems. First major outbreaks really didn't occur until 2007. First of those in Gabon, which is in Western Africa. And that outbreak was driven by alpha-pictus. Very unusual. It's really the only large-scale outbreak, several thousand human cases, the only large-scale outbreak driven by Aedes albopictus. Now, that was in Africa. The African biotype of Aedes albopictus is much more prone to transmitting human disease than is the Japanese biotype that we have here. So we're not so concerned about it, but it does indicate that albopictus, at least some of the biotypes, can transmit this virus at epidemic level. More significant one to us is the first large outbreak that occurred outside of Africa on the island of Yap. Yap is Micronesian island, located right here, about halfway between Guam and Mindanao in the Philippines. If you read anything about Yap, you might remember that it's famous for being the place where they had stone money, giant stone money. It's like this big, that big, giant round rocks. Really famous for that. But in entomology, it's famous for this particular outbreak. So that we have now learned in retrospect that once it hit Yap, it diversified. Suddenly a bunch of different strains popped up, and some that were very important to us. Now from Yap, it moved eastward and landed in Brazil. This picture, can't read that. This picture is color-coded based on when the Zika appeared in South and Central America, with the lighter colors being first. Showed up prior to October, just about a year ago in Brazil. Actually, we started seeing the first microcephalic cases in Brazil just about a year ago. And from there into northern South America, moved north, and then eventually got across the Andes. It is now in Chile and Uruguay, as well as southern Florida. So it's pretty much every country on this map now has locally acquired cases of Zika. That's occurred in a year. terms of the potential range, there is some question if the range is restricted to Aedes aegypti. This is the distribution of Aedes aegypti in North America, north of Mexico. You see that it's up here in Kentucky. This is the, yeah, you can find them in Kentucky. You can't find them in enough density to maintain transmission. In terms of high enough density to maintain transmission, it's pretty much confined to central Florida south and roughly Houston area of Texas south. So nowhere near us. There's just not enough of them. It might be possible to get these one oddball transmission in Atlanta. It'll be a one-off thing. It won't be followed by increasing numbers of if Aedes aegypti is the only vector. If a tictus becomes a vector of this virus, then it can extend clearly well beyond Kentucky. We'll have a big problem there. Right now, there's no evidence that this will happen, but those of us who have been following Zika have been fooled before. It has really taken us to school. It's done stuff that we didn't know was possible with mosquito-borne virus before. So we're still not sure what's going on. The symptoms are pretty mild. Some mild conjunctivitis in the eye. See that picture there? Flu-like symptoms. Arthralgia, particularly in the wrists and the ankles. A little mild rash. That rash is particularly characteristic. Not typically neuroinvasive. Lasts maybe a week most. Deaths are very rare. I'm only aware of two of them. One that happened in French Polynesia, another one that happened about a month and a half ago in Utah, maybe 2 months ago. Generally only in very old or immunocompromised individuals. So really, when it first came into Brazil, I was down there at the time, and we weren't really too concerned about it. Pretty mild, just another little virus. People get it, most people will be fine. Some people will feel a little bad for a few days. Not a big deal. Then we learned, yeah, for most people, it's not a problem. But there's one group of people where it's a big problem, and that's these babies. Mothers and babies inside their womb are at severe risk of serious complications. The babies are born with microcephalic at a much higher rate than we've ever seen before. The prognosis for these babies are poor. They will, most of them will have a short, very greatly reduced lifespan. They'll be severely retarded. They'll have a number of medical problems that cared for their entire life. And it's a true tragedy for the mothers of these babies. The mothers themselves suffer a number of very specific symptomologies that are also symptoms. But just to show you what the microcephalic bursts in Brazil were, prior to the appearance of Zika, it went along at 100, 150 or so. It's a pretty rare condition per year. These were mostly associated with drug addictions on the part of the mother or injuries that caused anoxia to the baby and a few through other virus and diseases like toxoplasmosis, congenital rubella, those can do that as well. But it's a pretty rare condition. But then once Zika hit, first appeared in April 2015, you can see the numbers of microcephalic births that have occurred since then. So giant upswing. This is as of, these numbers are current as of epidemiological week 37, which would be about the middle of September, which I think it is. PAHO has a Zika regional update. It comes out every week and generally runs about 2 weeks behind, like this. So obviously a big problem for Brazil, which is especially compounded in that country because they have absolute ban against abortions. Not allowed under any circumstances. No exception. Woman has an abortion, she goes pregnant. Big problem. Now to the government's credit, they stepped forward and they said if you have a microcephalic baby as a result of Zika, you can't abort it because that's our law, then we'll help you take care of it financially. but the mother's still going to have to live with the tragedy. The family will have to deal with the tragedy for live mention. In addition to the microcephaly, we've seen a strong increase in another condition, Guillain-Barré, associated with the mothers, is paralysis. They become paralyzed. They're really in their legs. Sometimes they're unable to talk. It's been such a rare disease up until this point that no country really didn't do much in the way of official practice. And yet we had a good database to work from, so we don't have a good idea as to how much this has increased. We do know that we didn't start seeing good reports of this until this disease had moved from Brazil northward into Colombia, and as soon as the Colombians began to see it, they started keeping records. And this is some of the most recent data that we've seen. Very clear relationship between an increase in Zika cases and an increase in Guillain-Barré. So no completely what the relationship of that is, but it's clearly the two are clearly associated. Guillain-Barré itself is associated with other complications of Zika, odd forms of facial paralysis. This woman can't close her eyes. Other forms of facial paralysis that you see associated with this, also primarily in women. Spots in the face will just randomly become paralyzed, be like that for months. There's a very serious problem for people that have that. Another problem that has become relatively well documented now is disseminated septal myelitis. This is from a female, 30 years old, 1 week post-infection. Her MRI shows this very clear. Left hemiparesis right here. It's a problem that creates symptoms very similar to that of multiple sclerosis, except that, at least in this case, the few cases that we have, they have so far gone on to mostly recover. Some of them haven't completely recovered, but mostly recovered. ADM has formed with other viral infections that can be relapsing. So far, relapsing forms have not been seen with Zika. Could show up tomorrow, we don't know, but so far that has not been done. Incidence is about 1/3 of that of Guillain-Barré. So dramatic increase in microcephaly, about 40% increase in Guillain-Barré, and then this is increased by about 1/3 of the Guillain-Barré. Other neurological disorders which just started showing up, sensory polyneuropathy, where the peripheral nervous damage, peripheral nerve damage in the fingers and toes, particularly. This has been reported now about 2.5 months ago. You can see it's associated with demyelination of the nerves that lead to these parts, mostly from the Caribbean countries, very, very recent. And then even more recent, in just the last 4 to 6 weeks, there has been an association with the autonomic nerves, so that these people have problems controlling their bowels, their bladders. They have changes, dramatic changes in sweating patterns. They have changes in heat tolerance and that kind of thing. This is just within the last couple of weeks. It's so recent we don't know what the prognosis is. So far, the other demyelination-associated problems have been recoverable. People have recovered, but you don't really know what the story is yet. Now, one of the reasons that as this thing has moved along is that the virus has been changing. The virus has been changing. I mentioned to you that yak was a watershed event. Here is yak right there, and these are all African lineage. And as soon as it got to Yap Island, boom, this new strain developed. And then once it moved, and you can see the years here, 2007, 10, 13, 14, and then once it hit Suriname, boom, another diversification of the phylogenetic cladogram. Suriname, just in case you're not up on geography, that's where Suriname is, just on the north side of Brazil. Anyway, it hit Suriname, there diversified, went to the Caribbean. This is from earlier this year. We just this past week at an international congress saw another cladogram. We now have hundreds of these strains, and it gets too complicated to show in a single PowerPoint slide to be able to read anything. But it's pretty clear that there have been several of these diversification events as it has moved through to the point now that we're beginning to talk about an American strain, a strain that arose in the Americas. This complex, which has their own symptomology, everything I just talked about. None of these symptomologies I just talked about, since I started talking about microcephalic, you don't see that in the African strain of Zika. You don't see microcephaly in Africa, or Guillain-Barré Syndrome. You don't see any of that stuff. Those strains don't do that. Just the ones that are here. So anyway, it's continuing to mutate. I just talked about all these things and these symptomologies, and here they are listed by date when they first started showing up and by their location. So you can see very clearly it moved from Brazil to Colombia, Central America, the Caribbean, that these symptomologies all show up in sequence. A new one that showed up fairly recently is called acquired microcephaly. I put that in quotes because I don't like that term. I'll talk about it a little bit, the problems with that terminology. And then something that just showed up a couple of weeks ago is some isolated cases, travel-related cases of adults who have come to the Caribbean on vacation and then go back to the United States or to Europe and begin developing new forms of mental disorders. Memory problems, irritability, personality changes, all women. Only women. So there's only a half a dozen cases of this, but all associated with all of these events occurring shortly after the Zika. Meanwhile, while all this stuff is going on, this American strain has now bounced back across the Pacific and is invading southeastern Asia. Laos, the strain began showing up in February, Philippines and Cambodia in March, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, April, Myanmar in June, and has now moved into southern China just this past mosquito season. So we now pretty clearly have a global pandemic on our hands that is really quite serious. At this time last year, we weren't taking this virus seriously at all, and we're sorry. So we really have a big problem going on. A few developments with Zika that have occurred recently. First, female to male sexual transmission. You all probably heard that there's sexual transmission of this virus. It was mostly male to female or male to male, but recently we began to document cases from females as well. So that's good. This odd case in Utah, an elderly patient comes back from Central America, has Zika, really old, just really sick, starts being cared for by a male relative. He dies, and the male relative became infected. And that was in Utah, where there's no vectors at all, no possibility of mosquito-borne transmission, there's no possibility of blood-borne transmission, no possibility of sexual transmission. Things have been ruled out one by one, and so we're now thinking that somehow that caregiver became contaminated with the tears of the elderly patient. Wouldn't be surprising, because Zika can be found, viremia can be found in pretty much any bodily fluid, found in semen, with breast milk, urine, so having tears, not a big surprise. Local transmission, as you all know, is now occurring in the United States, primarily in southern Florida, in the Miami-Dade area, and Broward County, which is on the north edge of Miami, and Coral Gables, I believe. And then Hillsborough, which is Tampa, has had 1 or 2 cases. But so far, it's been confined to that very small area. Culex fasciatus. Culex, this is the house mosquito. You can lay in bed late at night, late summer, you have this mosquito buzzing around your ear, that's what this is. That's it. It's not Aedes aegypti, because they're not active at that time. It's this Culex kinky fasciatus, or very closely related species, Pipiens, which is the one we have here. These are the mosquitoes that vector West Nile virus. We just had a case of that here in Lexington. And if this thing is transmitting Zika, it's going to be really bad news for us. Because not only would it transmit it here, but it would overwinter as an adult here, would carry through the winter, so we would have it just continuously every year. Very controversial as to whether or not this is actually able to transmit Zika. We just came back from an all-day long seminar, symposium on this, whether or not this is actually a vector. And there's not a clear consensus. There's a lot of evidence on both sides. We're not sure yet what the story is. Hotly contested topic in my field right now. Zika microcephaly. We now know that women who contract Zika and then recover and then get pregnant are okay. Their babies don't have microcephaly. This has led to the unfortunate development of what we call them Zika parties. Were you the one that was telling me about the Zika parties? Yeah. There were Zika parties going on for women who are considering maybe becoming pregnant in the next year or 2 or 3. They go down to Puerto Rico and become artificially inoculated with Zika, thinking that they'll go ahead and get it, get over with, and then they'll be immune, and then their babies won't be microcephalic. Of course, they run the risk of all the other stuff. You know, Guillain-Barré, all those other things they run that risk. But it's not a treatment that I would recommend, but there are people that are doing it. It's also known that women, even if they're asymptomatic, that those are the women, if they get infected in the first trimester, those are the women that go on to have most of the microcephaly. And then now this postpartum form of microcephaly is referred to as acquired microcephaly. And in this context, that term means that the baby's born normal, it's got this normally proportion, but then as it grows, the body grows, but the head doesn't. It just stays small. And so over time, the body becomes big relative to the size of the head, and it's small relative to the size of the body, and it's microcephalic. That's a lot of variation, other problems, and so on. The problem with this term is that more commonly, acquired microcephaly refers to any non-genetic source of microcephaly. So if a woman has an injury or acquires any of these other viruses, drugs, that kind of thing, that also referred to as acquired microcephaly. So the two processes, so you get the same term, but really 2 different concepts that work here, and I really think that we ought to come up with a better terminology. You know, we're an entomologist, so we don't have the power to come up with medical terms that I would like to see a better term get adopted in the literature for that concept. Like this one. So, where are we going with Zika? What's the threat here in Central Kentucky? Zika. Do we really need to worry about it? Well, we've just come through this first season. We're done now. There's no risk of Zika in this part of the world for some time. But next year, Zika is going to start its season much closer to the United States than this past year. And it's going to start its season in close association, not just with Aedes aegypti, but also Aedes albopictus. Will it be able to jump? It's a mutating virus, it's changing. Will it be able to jump into this other vector? We don't know. 2017 is going to be a very critical period for us. We're going to be watching it very closely, because if locally acquired cases begin appearing north of, say, Orlando or, say, into southern Georgia, then that's going to be a sure sign that some species of mosquito other than Aedes aegypti is transmitting it, and it's probably going to be a mosquito that we have here. Probably going to either be Culex or Aedes albopictus. So next year is a real acid test for us. But now I want to talk about this really in a different context. And that is Zika didn't just come out of nowhere. And there's a reason why we're having Zika at this time and at this place. There's factors that cause Zika to show up as an epidemic. It's not just Zika, and more importantly, Zika is not the end of the line. There's going to be other things. One of the things that's happening that we see on a global scale is increasing outbreaks of zoonotic diseases in general. MERS, Ebola, swine flu, avian flu, these are all zoonotic diseases. They're not vector, but they're just part of the growing outbreaks of disease in human populations, to the point that over half of our infectious diseases now are zoonotic. And most of the mosquito vector diseases that we're dealing with are zoonoses. Take a look at some of the recent mosquito outbreaks that we've had in North America, north of Mexico, West Nile, and during this time period, 99 to 2006, killed a couple of thousand people here in the United States during that time period. Dengue came into the Keys. It reached its high water mark around 2010 or so. They still have cases of dengue that show up from time to time. Just had one the other day, but this was when it really hit its peak. Chikungunya followed. This time last year, we were all talking about chikungunya. We did a big congressional briefing on chikungunya in the summer of 2015, and that room was packed. People came from all over the place in Washington D.C. to listen to us talking about chikungunya. Nobody was talking about Zika. Zika. Now, on deck is a virus called Myaro. Myaro is a virus that another monkey virus, another flavivirus transmitted by mosquitoes. It just jumped into the Aedes aegypti human system. It's now circulating in the Caribbean. It has the joint pain, the debilitating, crippling joint pain problems of chikungunya, and the affinity for fetal nerve cells of Zika. So it's kind of an evil twofer. So it's now saying, now, is it going to explode into an epidemic? We don't know. But every other closely related flavivirus in the Myaro group does. So there's no reason to believe that it's not going to be our next big problem. Next year we could if not next year, the year after next, we could very well be talking about it. Just that, I was just talking about North America here. And then here we have a paper that came out not too long ago on 28 epidemics of mosquito-borne disease in the South Pacific in just these 2 years. In the title of this referee journal, the authors refer to it as an unprecedented epidemic wave of mosquito-borne disease. So these outbreaks are becoming more frequent, not less frequent, more frequent. We never have experienced this sequence of so many outbreaks, and not only are they becoming more frequent, but they're also becoming more intense. Here's the annual global reported number of dengue cases in the United States. You see it just taking off. If I did a graph like this for chikungunya, it'd be the same thing. And here in a couple of years, we do the graph like this for Zika, it'd be the same thing. So these things are increasing in frequency, increasing in intensity. We're up to 5 million dengue cases. We'll be there with chikungunya. And then we got this. The old enemies are coming back. Another mosquito virus transmitted by Aedes aegypti and yellow fever. This is a map of Angola in April 2016. At that time, the capital, Luanda, was the epicenter of this large-scale outbreak that was occurring. World Health Organization used the entire global emergency supply of yellow fever vaccine on just this one outbreak, just in that one town. Unfortunately, yellow fever is just a nightmare disease. I mean, hemorrhagic. People bleed from their ears, their mouth, their nose, mouth. They become jaundiced, bright yellow eyes, bleeding from those bright yellow eyes. Hemorrhaging internally, so they're vomiting this black vomit and uncontrollable black diarrhea. They're delirious and hallucinating. I mean, anybody sees it just gets scared. And they run away. And that's what happened. All these people in Atlanta got scared, and they ran away. And now that yellow fever is rough and go. And now, thanks to the vaccination program that we had just last spring, look, this big dot here in Atlanta is a little dot. But all these little dots are big dots. And there's no more vaccine for the people in Angola. Use it all up. Meanwhile, those people in these northern provinces have moved on into the Congo, so that the fire line now is in Kinshasa. That's where WHO is fighting this outbreak of disease. But it has already gotten through that and moved into northeastern Congo, and it moved into Uganda. Uganda had 2 months ago. Uganda had 715,000 doses of yellow fever vaccine. Now they have less than 10. As of a few days, they've used it up. So the situation in Kinshasa is really critical right now. We don't know which way it's going to go, but we're following this situation. I'm going to talk about this in just a second. I'll talk about it right now. Yellow fever, we have a vaccine, right? We do. It works great. One of the best vaccines for any disease we have. But you still have enough of it. So 4 places in the world, 4 facilities in the world that make yellow fever vaccine. One is down for reconstruction and is out of operation completely until 2019. Another one has been suspended by the WHO, just came online again in Brazil, but Brazil has yellow fever in 80 municipalities, and so they are sequestering all of their vaccine. They're not allowing any of it to be exported. They give a little bit of it to some of the African countries, particularly Angola and Mozambique, and they speak Portuguese. But for the most part, they're not letting any of that. So that's only leaves us with 2 facilities. One of those is in Russia, so it's subject to geopolitical games. And the current production now is only about 1/3 of the normal demand. That would be the demand if we weren't having any outbreaks going on at all. As a result, we're so short of vaccine that in Kinshasa, the main front line for fighting this, we're having to dole this vaccine out at the rate of 1 dose for every 5 people. People are getting 1/5 of a dose. For an adult, that means that they will have protection from that virus for 1 year. For children, we don't know if that will even be a year of protection. The idea behind that is that if we can just hold it off for right now, then maybe next year we'll have more vaccine. Probably we will, but we'll also have more cases of yellow fever. So my question is, what happens when that yellow fever hits Nairobi? What happens? It goes from Nairobi to Mumbai. Speaking of Mumbai, largest city in India, 19 million people almost. Giant, humongous, mosquito-infested slums. This is a picture from National Geographic. Fairly typical picture of a slum in Mumbai. Millions and millions and millions of people live like this. Remember, we're dealing with a container-breeding mosquito that can complete its life cycle in a bottle cap of water. A tiny amount of water. Imagine how many thousands of those teeny little pieces of water there are in this picture, just in this one spot. And there's millions and millions of people living like this. They're just unprotected. There's 82 non-stop flights from Nairobi to Mumbai a week. 90% occupancy rate in the passenger sites. It's an 8-hour flight. We already know that people, as soon as they see yellow fever, are going to get out of town. Where are they going to go? Mumbai just had 1,500 cases of dengue in the last 10 days. Another 2,000 cases of chikungunya in the last 10 days. The yellow fever vaccination rate in Mumbai is estimated, optimistically, to be 5%. WHO says in order to stop a yellow fever outbreak, we have to have 80% vaccination. Where are we going to get those doses? We're already 30 or 40 million doses short of what we need. Where are we going to get the millions of doses that we need to protect just Mumbai? And Mumbai is one city in a country with 1 million people. We had another 2,000 cases of dengue last week in New Delhi, and another 33,500 in the southern city of Bangalore. So the question here is, what's going on? What are we doing here? Well, there's several factors that are driving this. First of all, there are those factors that are specific to Aedes aegypti. It's a unique mosquito in terms of its ability to spread disease among human populations. There's certainly the adaptation of zoonotic diseases. I already mentioned this to human hosts. Human travel patterns are a major factor that are changing things. And urbanization and decline in standard of living, particularly in these emerging countries. Concentrated poverty, massive, large numbers of poor people all together in these tiny little areas. Luanda has 8 million people, but the surface area is about the same size as London. Mushing all these people together, you just asked it for. Notice that climate change is not part of this picture. You can explain all the problems that we've been having without resorting to climate change. I'm not the only one that says this. Go to the CDC website, Google and search mosquito disease, mosquito-borne disease, and climate change. You'll see exactly this wording. You go to the WHO website, same thing. Lots of reviews that say this as well. Climate change actually is kind of a distraction. These are the things that are really driving the Aedes aegypti problems that we're having in the world right now. Just a few words about these. We almost had Aedes aegypti eradicated from the Americas. Got it down to such low levels that Venezuela said, you know what, that's good enough. Well, it wasn't good enough, and it has come back. This is one of the factors that's driving the problem in the Americas, because while we had this population down really low for decades, we got a population of humans that are completely naive to mosquito-borne disease, and so we need to build up some herd immunity. That's one of the problems that we're dealing with. This is one of the major ones. It used to be that travel between South America and other places, or between Africa and other places, was transhemispheric. Somebody would go to Brazil in January, get a mosquito-borne disease, come back to Kentucky in January. No mosquitoes that are here in January, so the person recovers, doesn't pass it on, disease stops. But because of a number of economic forces, the dramatic increase in the human travel between Africa and South America, this occurs in the same mosquito season and with the same mosquito species. That's the same biotypes. So that's certainly one of the things. This is a major effect. Urbanization. Over half of humans are now living in major urban centers. Major urban centers being defined by a population of more than 10 million people. So giant cities are rising up around the world. And over half the people, and it's going to continue. We're going to be at 70% of people by 2050. So this is a major trend driving this increased population density, rising concentrated poverty. Poor people are a lot less likely to take the precautions that they need, repellents. They're much less likely to have air conditioning, which keeps the doors and windows closed. Much more likely to have to work and live outside. They're much more likely to be living in areas that have very poor drainage and have much higher mosquito populations. So these are the factors that are driving this. An immense problem. This is a favela in Sao Paulo, very typical. This is what it looks like up close. You can imagine all of the tiny little breeding sites here, water running down the streets because it rains every day. It's just a mess. These are some of the things that we can do. I don't know if I really want to. I've got a couple more slides, and I'm starting to run out of time. There are some things that we can do. Getting better mosquito control, certainly. Accepting the mosquito control that we have is a major thing that we certainly in the developed country have to get used to. We have to realize that the products that we're using to control mosquitoes, whether it's GMO mosquitoes, insecticides, whatever process we're using, we have to use it. Because if we don't, the human suffering is going to be absolutely enormous. So we have to get to where we can, get past the problems that some people are having with some of the insecticides and other technology. Community participatory programs, this is a major need. There's some wonderful programs that are out there. They've shown great progress in reducing human disease, but we haven't been able to sustain it. Ready to go out and start a school program. The kids go out and find a whole bunch of mosquitoes, but after the funding runs out, that project stops. Finally, this is going to be my last point. I'd like to open the thing up to questions after that. We need to start a long-term social education program. These mosquitoes breed in containers. They have very short flight ranges, maybe 50 yards max. Most of the people that get bit by these mosquitoes have bred those mosquitoes. Go into a favela of Rio de Janeiro, 40% of the homes in these 4 neighborhoods have mosquitoes breeding inside the home, in there. So it doesn't matter what the mosquito control authority want to do, they're not going to get those. That's why the Brazilian army has sent 250,000 soldiers to go out, go house to house every week, go in people's houses looking for mosquitoes, and find a lot of mosquitoes. Instead, we need to start having breeding sites of mosquitoes as socially unacceptable as we currently make drunk driving or smoking in restaurants. When I first came here to the University of Kentucky in 1978, it was common to be in a class and to have students smoking. It was common to have faculty smoking while they're giving a lecture. That was the normal thing. People thought that was just fine. But we don't do that anymore, and we need to make having breeding sites of mosquitoes just that socially acceptable. So let me just skip over a couple of these real quick and tell you this is our biggest urgency, and that is we have to absolutely raise the priority of mosquito control from thinking about them as nuisances to thinking about them as very serious public health threats that is threatening to kill millions of us on this planet. It's a serious problem. It's getting worse. We better do something about it. So on that happy note, I would like to tell you that if you'd like to know more about mosquito-borne disease, visit us on Facebook. We have a pretty popular Facebook page. It's an old image, but we've got now 1,000 people following us. We get a lot of comments, so come see us. Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you picked up something.
One researcher in Brazil had claimed that they were able to infect Culex with Zika. Has that been repudiated?
No, that's highly controversial. Yes, Culex can acquire the virus, it can propagate, it can get to the salivary glands, it can be expressed to salivary fluid at high enough titers to cause human infection. However, the Culex doesn't feed on humans, so it doesn't really have the vectorial capacity. So the vector competence is fine, but the vectorial capacity just isn't there. That's the problem.
Or they could feed on another species, which then another mosquito would
It could, but they prefer to feed on birds. See, that's the problem. So they pick up the virus and then they go feed on birds.
Or is that done with us now, right?
Yeah.
Went from birds to humans.
Yeah, and how many cases of West Nile do we have? I mean, we have like 3. Yeah, so so it's possible that a tiny number of the Zika infections are caused by Culex, but we don't really know. One of the problems is with both Culex and Aedes aegypti, it's pretty common that when you go out and you catch these mosquitoes, and you come in and you do virology, you find almost none of them will bite. Now part of that is because they don't maintain cold chain virus, and cats can't maintain a cold chain unless you lose it. Part of it is logistical, but part of it is there's just a lot of mosquitoes out there that aren't carrying virus, and they're, so that's an issue we have many.
Great. Another question, Steve?
The fact that Zika virus is associated with birth defects, I was wondering how unusual that is among other mosquito-borne viruses. Are there other viruses that are associated with serious birth defects?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is new for mosquito viruses for birth defects in humans. Now, like I said, Zika is in this one clade, very small clade, it's von Wiening clade, which does cause birth defects in monkeys. It's a monkey virus. So they're in naive monkeys. But with respect to Zika, it had never been documented to cause birth defects in humans. It's been around in humans for nearly 50 years until it got to Brazil. Now, one of the questions is, why is that? Some people think, well, it mutated, and there's certainly a lot of evidence for that. But also, there's the issue that before it was, island hopping is getting into pretty small populations of humans. Yeah, so you get 1 or 2 extra cases of microcephaly. You don't really pick it up statistically. You have to wait until you get to Brazil, where all of a sudden you got a population of 250 million people, and that's when you see, big increases. So it's probably a combination of those two things: mutated, and then we had to get to a place that had really big populations, so we could get the statistical numbers.
I've got a couple of questions. One, you mentioned some of these diseases occur in women. Is that only in pregnant women, or is that even non-pregnant women?
The women that are most likely to have Guillain-Barré are women that became pregnant, that became infected when they were pregnant. But women who were not infected can also acquire it. But it's much more common in the women that carry the pregnancy during their infection.
And my other question was, how rapidly do these new symptoms that you were talking about, how rapidly and what mechanism does that get, that information goes to primary care physicians so they can know, they recognize what they see?
These have been, these symptoms that have been occurring as this disease has been moving through, third world countries. So, and each one of these countries has their own mechanism, so I don't know how.
What about this one?
Well, this country, we've got lots of opportunities for primary care physicians to learn about it. A lot of information dissemination.
So I heard recently that Lexington had its first case of Zika. It was acquired elsewhere, of course, but diagnosed here. And then a couple of days later, also in the Herald Leader, I see a letter to the editor, somebody claiming that we're freaking out, right? That we're going too far by spraying. There's extra spraying for mosquitoes that was instituted by local health departments. Is this an overreaction for a single case from somewhere else?
Well, I do training for the state for emergency response, for mosquito emergency response, and no, it depends on what you mean by spraying. What we train our environmental strike teams to do is to go into an area where we've had a recent case and concentrate on that one spot. We can chemically quarantine a patient from the mosquito population using residual insecticides. Anyway, we can isolate it just down to that one city block. Now, we don't need to go out and spray the entire city, but we do need to knock the mosquito population down as quickly as possible in the immediate vicinity of that one case. Now, having said that, we're done with the mosquitoes, so we don't have to do that. We're done with the mosquitoes that can vector Zika. Still have the mosquitoes that can vector West Nile, but we're done with the Zika
For the season.
For this season. Mike.
So, for us that, spend their days dealing with communities and the public, you're showing these pictures, Grayson, of San Pablo, and you could go to the backyards of South Florida and see, similar quantities of container breeding. I mean, this mosquito, since it can breed in such tiny little places, I mean, I'm completely depressed, you know, from hearing what everybody's saying, because, you know, from a public health standpoint, I mean, okay, there are areas like New Orleans and South Florida that have big budgets for mosquito control, but the rest of the country does not, and isn't this gonna take tremendous, mosquito control on people's property?
This is
Places?
what-
I mean,
this
it's different.
This is what I'm saying. This is not a technological problem. It's not an entomological problem. It's not a medical problem. It's not a public health problem. It's a social problem. We need to think of it as a social disease, because it's a result of community and individual lifestyle decisions. If I want to go sit out in my backyard and, you know, drink a Coke and throw the can out in the grass and then that fills up with water and starts breeding mosquitoes, well, that's because of something I did. And we need to change, you know, it's gonna take decades to do that, but we as a species have decades that we're planning on being on this planet, I guess. But but you're right, that's the only way. We have to change people's behavior. If we can't do that, then we're gonna have one mosquito outbreak after another.
I mean, short of the vaccine.
But if you have a
We're
vaccine
not
for Zika,
going-
if you have a vaccine for Zika, that's not gonna help my arm.
You are-
And, you know, there's thousands of these zoonoses out there. You're not gonna have a vaccine for every one of them. You know, I know that there's folks that are working on vaccines that will cut across viruses, but still, there's thousands of them in multiple families, not just flavivirus, but also alphavirus, virus, and so on.
Looks like we'll have time for one more question. Someone have one?
Do we know, for example, the rate at which microcephaly occurs with Zika-related infection is still relatively rare? So lack of reports, let's say in Central Africa and parts of Asia, where it's not been reported as a major problem. Is this could this possibly due simply to the lack of reportable diseases in those areas?
It could be, but it's a pretty dramatic increase, and it's a pretty dramatic symptom. It's a pretty hard thing to miss. You go to Brazil, I mean, you see them.
Right.
You
I
see
mean,
it.
some of these isolated areas in Central Africa, same problem with Ebola, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't being
Yeah,
reported.
now, you go to an isolated area, you're not gonna see that much Aedes aegypti, so you're not gonna see that much Aedes-borne disease, actually. But where you're gonna see it is in the big giant cities.
Because
Yeah.
I had read where, in fact, there's been cases of microcephaly associated with chikungunya.
Yeah, a lot of viruses, like I say, can cause this, but we haven't seen a mosquito virus do it at this scale like this before. This is new for us.
Dr. Brown will be here for probably a couple minutes afterwards, so let's join together and thank him for this.